When I was a young guy, probably 10, 11 years old, we had a family friend who flew Comets for British European Airways. And if ever we flew on the Comets, he always put me in the cockpit, and I was there from the takeoff to landing, which of course you can't do these days. And I just fell in love with a Comet. It was one of the most iconic cockpits I think I've ever come across, and I've worked on many aircraft in my time. And indeed, I've worked on Comets. This is a Comet 4, which was the very last of the Comets. This one was built in 1958, and it originally went to BOAC as a passenger aircraft. Shortly afterwards it was leased out to Malaysian Airways and one or two other World Airways, and it ended up with the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough. They used it as a test bed until it ceased flying in the early 90s. I ended up working at Boscombe Down for the Army Air Corps, doing a project for them. And this Comet was then sitting in the corner of the airfield, and it was used as a spares bed for the Last Flying Comet, which the RAE had at that time. I always said, if ever this one got scrapped, I would buy the cockpit. Bit of a joke, but that happened. I actually made an offer for it to the scrap man, and he accepted it. He cut the cockpit section off the main aircraft, and I had it shipped back here. I built this shed round it and started to restore it back to its original condition. Painstakingly restored all the instruments and the flying controls to make it look real again. And then figured, well, got to take it to the next stage now, and the next stage, of course, was to turn into a simulator. Some flaps in there. One flaps. I'm ready. Three. Okay. Okay. What's that? I guess I was quite lucky. Being in the aviation trade, I knew people who knew people, and through scrounging and searching on the internet, I eventually found bits here and bits there. Boscombe Down were very helpful. They had a few bits and pieces lying around, and they always let me choose what I wanted. When it came to turning it into a simulator, what I didn't want to do was to destroy any of the original equipment on board, so things like the instruments, which I had painstakingly sourced. I didn't want to rip them to bits to turn them into simulator instruments. So I started to build my own instruments by machining the plates and using servos and so forth to make them work. I mean, there's a small example there. That's a homemade instrument, very simple, one needle. It's a VSI, vertical speed indicator, and it's run off a servo which you'd use in a model aircraft. That then has to be calibrated back through the software into the operating medium, which is a FSX flight simulator, and hey presto, we have working instruments. In all, there's probably around about 60 working instruments inside this Comet at the moment. Most difficult item to find were the seats. The seats in this Comet are the red leather, very iconic 50s, 60s style. When an aircraft gets scrapped, they're usually the first things to be removed, and they usually end up in someone's garage or office. So it was a real problem trying to find those. And again, it was only through contacts I managed to find the seats in reasonable condition. At the moment, it's virtually complete inside. I mean, all the instruments are working, all the controls are working, and you can have any emergency you like, any weather conditions, so it really is pretty much complete inside. What I would like to do outside, which would make it even more flying experience would be to introduce a curved screen, so the screens will come right back here, right round to the other side, so any window you look out, any windscreen you look out of in the cockpit, you'd see the scene as you would if you were really flying. And I guess finally, if I can ever find a bigger shape for it, I would love to put it onto hydraulic rams and have a sense of movement within inside the cockpit. You are then flying, there's no question. It makes a very real simulation, and I often have people down who have some flying experience, a lot of flying experience, or no flying experience, and you can literally get absorbed into the flight. You're concentrating so much on what you're doing, especially on a bad weather landing, for example, when you're using the ILS system. You can be totally focused on the flight, and you can forget everything that's going around you, and it can be quite an exhilarating experience. I'm always keen to show it off to people who have an aviation interest. It has a soft spot for many enthusiasts, and I'm always willing to let an enthusiast have a go and see how they get on with it.